Hello, welcome to Practical AI. My name is Jeff Northrup, and this is Peter Lynn. Today's topic is natural language processing and the epic battle that it's having with large language models. Peter, what is the future of natural language processing? But first, what is it relative to large language models and what ChatGPT is doing?
Great question. So the history of natural language processing goes back probably to the 60s and probably even earlier. And the idea was you could take text, parse it, and then identify the parts of the sentence, the subject, the object, the noun, the verbs, adjectives, and so on. And so you would basically take any piece of text and produce the grammar from what you know about English or German, whatever, and produce a tree-like structure for that sentence. So that used to be all handwritten. The difficulty was that it was hard to do for the general case. If you had a very specific case, it was very constrained. It was easy to do. But the minute it was outside of that box, it didn't work very well.
So handwritten, you mean like with classic programming code?
Yep. Yeah, so C, C++, whatever.
And
Some people wrote the code.
what were the advantages when you compare natural language processing of old or of recent to large language models today? Did it have any benefits relative to what we're seeing in LLMs?
The real benefit is that you know exactly what it's doing. So back in 2002, I worked in compliance and we wrote a natural language editor for compliance rules for federal regulations around securities and trading. So that was a very tight, neat domain, and we could control exactly what the syntax was. The users would write in this legalese like the portfolio cannot exceed this percentage for this sector or industry group or whatever. So the structure of these rules that they're writing in English was very structured and it was easy to parse. And so then if we want to introduce a new kind of rule, it was very easy because I would just go into the code and go, okay, yeah, this is where I change it. And so there wasn't any guessing like, how is it doing this? Whereas today, if you give the same rules to LLMs and say, parse these regulations, you wouldn't really know exactly how it's doing it. If it got it wrong, you wouldn't know where to look.
So that comes up a lot, this idea that we don't know what the machine learning or the AI thing is doing.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why don't we know what's happening?
Well, we don't because there's millions and billions of weights. And those weights represent something that is doing some amount of work, but we don't know exactly what it's doing. We literally can't tell. So you say, here's a prompt. It parses it and goes, oh, Peter's asking this question, and here's a likely answer. But like all we can see is my input, the prompt, and then the output. And then we can kind of see what's happening, but we don't know why or how it's doing what it's doing.
Okay, so let's say I'm a fanatic for AI, and I'm looking at you, and I'm like, okay, you're old school, doesn't matter. AI is the future, and whatnot. If my large language model is working, why do I have to care about whether I can fix a bug? Like, it's working. Like, why do you think it's not going to work?
Well, so in the short term, it does work, but in the long term, people are always inventing new words, right? Like if you think back to 1930s, the slang of 1930s is different than the slang of 2000s, right? Like if you're in Boston, the word wicked is used in a variety of ways. Like that's wicked good, or that's wicked. Um, and so as language changes and new words are invented, Language models are first, there's a bunch of tokens that represent either words or portions of words. So like a large word might be broken down into like 2 or 3 tokens. And then it uses those tokens to then do the training and then create all the weights. So if there's a new word, there's no token matching it. Therefore, when you ask it a prompt with new words, it won't know what to do, literally, because it has no way of representing this new word.
Will large language models embrace any of the natural language processing methods that were leveraged back in the day?
Well, so I think more generally, for it to scale and be more efficient, it's going to have to get smaller, and it has to be more modular and components so that we can mix and match things. Like today, when you build a piece of software, there's different modules, different components, what's called component-oriented architecture, where you can take different things and put them together to build a full application. But you can take parts of those and build a different application. Today, LLMs are monolithic. It's one huge thing, and you can't break it up. And so in the future, we'll have to break this up into smaller, more efficient pieces.
And if you were coaching a 22-year-old machine learning fanatic, is there anything that you would have them look at or consider in some of the older approaches, including natural language processing?
I mean, I would say learn as much as you can, because there's a lot of stuff that's been tried that are still useful. And if we look at neural networks and what's happened the last decade, a lot of it is just rehashing and reusing old ideas. And so the more you know, the more you can draw on the experience of other people, because we do have 40 plus years of computer science, and there's a lot of wisdom there.
So is it the end of natural language processing?
No, I think it just, so LMs just solves the parsing part of like, I don't have to write code that takes a sentence and breaks it up into the different parts. So that part is solved. Everything else after that still is unsolved. So if you wanted to create a program that helps a comedian write jokes, or a author write romance novels, or a playwright write a new script, or a new script for either Hollywood or for Broadway, that's, you're still going to need something much more specialized for that domain.
And that just doesn't exist right now?
Well, people have been submitting really bad manuscripts to publishers, to the point where a lot of publishers are not accepting any new manuscripts because they're just really shitty quality manuscripts.
Does that mean that they're using ChatGPT to write their manuscripts?
That's, yep, that's what's happening.
Awesome. Well, this is a good topic. I'm sure some of the old school NLP folks will be trying to leverage some of the old stuff that they've been doing and applying it to the large language models. And this entire sort of space, language, still has a long way to go. So I think there's room there for some innovation and maybe some merging of some older technologies with new ones.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Good. Well, thanks, Peter. This is a good topic, and we'll stay on top of it. Take care.